I want you to just think for a second about how incredibly fragile human language really is.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, you and I can send a simple text message today, and the person reading it on the other end might just completely misinterpret our tone.
Right. Happens all the time.
Exactly. And now, multiply that fragility across centuries, across these vast continents and rising and falling empires. Words just naturally change their meaning.
They do. Translations inevitably lose those tiny, beautiful little nuances.
Yeah, and what we might consider this lovely, poetic metaphor today, well, it could have been meant as a literal physical truth 1,000 years ago.
Which is fascinating, yeah.
It is, and it raises this really profound, almost mind-bending philosophical paradox. I mean, if a higher transcendent intelligence wanted to leave humanity an eternal, completely uncorrupted message, how could they possibly do it using our fragile, ever-shifting human words?
Well, I mean, that's the ultimate communication problem, isn't it?
Right.
Because words are culturally bound. They're historically fluid. But if we step back and look at the architecture of the cosmos itself, there is really only one universal, absolutely uncorruptible language.
And that is mathematics.
It's exactly. Mathematics is completely immune to cultural bias. It just doesn't care about the passage of time. A prime number functions exactly the same way today as it did, 5 millennia ago.
Like Galileo said, right? The book of nature is written in the language of mathematics.
You get the nail on the head.
So our focus for today's deep dive is to explore this mesmerizing intersection, a place where spiritual wisdom basically collides with cryptography and modern science.
It's a really exciting topic.
It really is. We are going into the mathematical architecture of the Quran and this highly debated, deeply mysterious phenomenon that's known as Code 19.
Yeah, and we're going to examine how a text made entirely of words might actually be resting on this foundation of pure mathematics.
Right.
And we aren't just looking at the rhetorical beauty of a text here. We're looking at its naked, calculable structure.
It's the actual data.
Exactly. The symmetries, the prime numbers, the statistical deviations. It really challenges us to look at a book of words and question if we are actually looking at a mathematical matrix.
It's kind of like, imagine you've been staring at this beautiful classical painting your entire life. You appreciate the colors, the emotional depth of the brushstrokes,
Yeah.
but then suddenly you put on a pair of 3D glasses and you realize that every single brushstroke is actually part of a complex, perfectly balanced mathematical equation.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
It completely changes how you view the canvas. But to understand how a book of words can simultaneously be a book of math, we have to travel back in time a bit.
Right. Back to 7th century Arabia.
Because back then, there were no separate numbers. The modern Arabic numerals, like the 1, 2, 3s we use today, they just didn't exist in their current separated form.
Yeah, the alphabet itself was essentially the calculator.
Exactly.
And that is the foundational concept we really have to grasp to understand any of this. In the ancient Semitic world, they used what is known as the Abjad system, or Hisab al-Jumal.
Which is kind of like Roman numerals, right?
It is similar, yeah. People know Roman numerals where an X is 10 and a V is 5.
Yeah.
The Arabic Abjad system is like that, but far more comprehensive.
Okay, how so?
Well, every single letter of the 28-letter alphabet is permanently assigned an exact, unchangeable numerical weight.
Right, so the first 9 letters of the alphabet represent the numbers 1 through 9.
Correct.
And then the next 9 letters step up and represent the tens, so from 10 up to 90. And the final 10 letters represent the hundreds, stretching from 100 all the way up to 1,000.
You've got it. So because letters are literally numbers, every single word you write automatically carries a specific numerical total.
It has a value.
Exactly. Take the name Ali, for instance. In Arabic, it uses the letters Ain, Lam, and Ya. In the Abjad system, Ain is 70, Lam is 30, and Ya is 10. You add those up, and the name Ali totals exactly 110.
Wow. And look at the Arabic word for God, Allah. It uses alif, which is 1, 2 lams, which are 30 each, and ha, which is 5. That totals exactly 66.
Right. Every single word basically has a mathematical shadow.
A mathematical shadow. I love that. And it means that merchants in the marketplace were literally doing arithmetic using language.
They were.
And I think that's exactly what makes this so wild, because it's so easy to hear this today and think, oh, this is just some retrofitted modern esoteric magic.
Like numerology or something.
Yeah, like it's just people playing with numbers to find hidden meanings. But this was the hard, everyday, commercial, and literary reality of the
It
time.
was just how they wrote.
Right. If you went to the market to buy grain, or if you were a scribe recording a date for a treaty, you used these letter values. It wasn't a hidden code at all. It was the everyday standard.
Which means reading the original text of the Quran means you are, by definition, reading a giant intertwined mathematical construct.
Exactly. So knowing that every single letter holds a specific numerical value naturally leads to a larger question.
What happens when we zoom out?
Right. What happens when we look at the structural scaffolding of the entire book, rather than just zooming in on individual words?
Well, to really appreciate that macro structure, we have to remember the historical context of how the book was formed.
Right, because this text wasn't written by a team of scholars sitting in some quiet library with spreadsheets and reference books.
Not at all. It was revealed orally, verse by verse, over 23 incredibly chaotic years.
We're talking about periods of war, periods of peace, migration, shifting political landscapes.
And it was delivered by the Prophet Muhammad, who in Islamic tradition was Ummi.
Meaning he was unable to read or write.
Exactly. He had no notes to cross-reference, no outlines.
Yet, when you look at the final compiled book, known as the Mushaf, it consists of exactly 114 chapters, known as surahs, and exactly 6,236 verses.
And if we analyze those foundational numbers, we uncover this stunning matrix based on odd and even balances.
Let's walk through that matrix, because it acts almost like a cryptographic checksum.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
So if you simply add up all the surah numbers, chapter 1 plus chapter 2 plus chapter 3, all the way up to 114, the total sum is exactly 6,555.
Right. Now, researchers took all 114 surahs and created a grid.
Okay, a grid.
Yeah, for each individual chapter, they added its specific chapter number to the number of verses it contains.
Got it.
Then they divided those 114 results into two columns, an odd column for the odd results, and an even column for the even results.
And when you add up everything in that odd column, the sum is exactly 6,555.
The precise sum of all the chapter numbers.
Exactly. And when you add up everything in the even column, the sum is exactly 6,236.
Which is the exact total number of verses in the entire text.
It is a flawless 50-50 balance. Even the arrangement of the chapters perfectly splits into this mathematical grid.
Yeah, it's 27 of them are odd, 27 are odd even, 30 are even, and 30 are even odd.
The structural integrity there is just remarkable.
It really is. I mean, if you were to add or remove a single verse, or if you were to swap the historical order of two chapters, that entire mathematical equilibrium instantly shatters.
It's essentially a built-in verification mechanism.
Like in computer science.
Exactly. A file has a checksum value attached to it. If a single byte of data is altered or corrupted during a download, the checksum fails and you know the file is broken.
The text seems to have a similar center of gravity holding it together.
And speaking of a center of gravity, if we look right at the middle of those 114 chapters, we find Surah 57.
Right in the middle.
Right. And the title of that exact middle chapter is Al-Hadid, which translates to the iron.
Okay.
If you take the word al-Hadid and run it through that everyday Abjad mathematical system we just talked about, well, the value is exactly 57.
Oh, wow.
The 57th chapter, named iron, mathematically equals 57.
Which is a brilliant transition into the microstructure of the text. Because if the macrostructure represents perfect symmetry, the microstructure operates like a cosmic cryptographic key.
It really does.
We see this most clearly in the greatest linguistic riddle of the text, the huruf muqatta'at.
The disconnected letters.
Yes.
Just imagine opening a book and instead of a word, the chapter just starts with random letters, like reading ALM or YS.
It's very striking. Exactly 29 surahs begin with these seemingly disconnected Arabic letters.
And for 1,400 years, scholars basically just threw their hands up, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
They were considered divine mysteries, secrets between the author and the prophet.
But in the computer age, we started to look at the math of these letters, and it is incredibly specific.
Very specific. Exactly 29 chapters use these disconnected letters. To make these combinations, exactly 14 different Arabic letters are utilized.
Okay.
And they form exactly 14 distinct combinations.
So 29, 14, and 14.
Right. And if you add those foundational numbers together, 29 plus 14, you get 57.
Which mathematically is exactly 19 times 3.
Precisely. And those micro patterns just cascade down into the text itself. Take Surah 50, it's named Kaf, and it begins with the single disconnected letter Kaf.
So what happens if you count them?
If you go through that entire chapter and count every single time the letter Kaf appears, it's exactly 57 times.
Again, 19 times 3.
Exactly. Or look at Surah 36, famously known as Yasin, because it starts with the letters Ya and Sin. Count the letter Ya in that chapter 237 times. Count the letter Sin 48 times. Add 237 and 48 together, you get 285.
Let me guess.
Which is exactly 19 times 15.
That is just wild. And this specific recurring prime number 19, it became the focus of intense study in 1969.
Yeah, by Dr. Rashad Khalifa.
Right, an Egyptian-American biochemist. He decided to feed the text into early mainframe computers to systematically analyze these letter frequencies. And he is the one who identified what became known as code 19.
And that number isn't just pulled out of thin air either.
No, the origin of this mathematical focus comes directly from the text itself. In Surah 74, verse 30, there's a very brief, really mysterious statement that just says, "Over it are 19.
And Khalifa argued that this 19 was an omnipresent structural spine.
Yeah, and he found multiples of 19 everywhere. We've already mentioned the 114 surahs. Well, that's 19 times 6.
Right.
The opening formula of the text, the basmala, contains exactly 19 Arabic letters. The very first chronological revelation given to Muhammad, which is Surah 96, verses 1 through 5, consists of exactly 19 words.
Oh, wow.
And those 19 words contain exactly 76 letters, which is 19 times 4.
It even extends to the core theology, doesn't it?
It does. The Arabic word for unity, or the one, is wahid. Its abjad value is 19, and it is used exactly 19 times in the text in reference to God.
Now, I want to push back here a little bit because skepticism is important.
Always.
You can find multiples of 19 in any massive book if you look hard enough. I mean, I could probably find a code 19 in Moby Dick or War and Peace if I just kept crunching numbers.
Sure.
How do we know this isn't just humans finding faces in the clouds?
Well, I mean, that is the exact right question to ask. The difference between finding a pattern in Moby Dick and what we see here really comes down to the absolute density of the clusters and the theological triangulation.
Theological triangulation. What do you mean by that?
So, in mathematics, prime numbers like 19 are indivisible. They are the atoms of the numerical world, the foundation of modern cryptography, because they just cannot be broken down further.
Right. They stand alone.
Exactly. And in Islamic theology, this mathematical indivisibility perfectly reflects tawhid, the absolute indivisible unity of God.
Oh, I see.
The math isn't just randomly occurring. It mirrors the core theological message of the text itself.
So the medium truly is the message.
Yes. And while 19 acts as this structural spine, sort of like the steel rebar holding up the walls of a building, there are other numbers that give the text cosmological depth.
They provide the 3D dimensions of the room, so to speak.
Exactly. Specifically, the numbers 7 and 40.
Yeah, 7 and 40 map beautifully onto space and time.
Right.
The number 7 represents the macro order of space and creation. The text repeatedly speaks of 7 heavens, and pilgrims make 7 rounds of tawaf around the Kaaba in Mecca.
It's everywhere.
Yeah, and if you look at the opening chapter, El-Fatiha, it's an entire cascade of prime numbers. It has exactly 7 verses, exactly 29 words, and exactly 139 letters.
And all 3 are prime numbers.
All 3.
And then there's 40 representing time and transformation. It's the number of spiritual maturation.
Right, Muhammad received his first revelation at the age of 40.
Exactly. Moses spent 40 nights in spiritual retreat. The numbers aren't just blindly counting things, they are actively conveying deep, intentional meaning.
But this raises an intellectual challenge we really have to face head on.
Okay, let's hear it.
Does this mathematical symmetry hold up everywhere? We can't just marvel at the pristine patterns, we have to stress test them.
We have to look for the cracks.
We absolutely do. And the history of Dr. Rashad Khalifa himself serves as a tragic warning about becoming too obsessed with the math.
Why? What happened?
Because, as he kept digging, the math didn't always work perfectly. There were anomalies. And to save his perfect 19 model, Khalifa actually broke the ultimate theological taboo.
Wait, really? What did he do?
He declared that the last two verses of chapter 9, verses 128 and 129, were human forgeries, simply because they broke his 19 pattern.
Oh, wow. So he elevated the mathematical algorithm above the text itself.
Exactly. He later claimed to be a messenger of God, and tragically, he was assassinated in 1990.
That is tragic. And his story highlights a major text-critical issue with the code.
It does. Khalifa's computer models relied entirely on the 1924 Cairo Standard Edition of the text, which is known as the Hafs recitation.
Right.
But if you go to North and West Africa, the traditional recitation is called Warsh. Now, to be clear, the theological meaning is identical.
But historically, there are minor orthographic differences.
Yes. Let's explain what that means in practice, because it's crucial.
Go for it.
In the Hafs recitation, a specific word might be physically written out with the letter Aleph. In the Warsh tradition, that exact same word is pronounced the same way, and it means the exact same thing, but the letter Aleph is implied. It's not physically written out.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Right, because the Abjad system relies entirely on the physical, written letters. The mathematical value of that word changes completely depending on which manuscript tradition you are holding.
So if you apply the Code 19 math to a Warsh manuscript, the entire house of cards collapses in multiple places.
Exactly. And statisticians also warn of the Texas sharpshooter fallacy.
Right, right. Imagine a person shooting 100 random holes into the side of a barn and then walking up and painting a bullseye around the cluster of holes that happen to be closest together.
Exactly. You can find patterns anywhere if you're allowed to ignore the misses. For instance, the math of 19 fails entirely on other initial disconnected letters, like Taha in Surah 20.
Which is why contemporary theologians strongly warn against reducing the deep moral compass of this text to a mere calculator trick.
They classify these structural symmetries as ijaz al-bayan, rhetorical and structural excellence.
It's undeniably beautiful, it's profound, but it's not a rigid, unyielding algorithm.
No, it's not.
But, the Texas sharpshooter fallacy assumes a human is cherry-picking the data.
Right.
What happens when you remove the human entirely and let a blind, unbiased machine learning algorithm look at the text?
Well, we're now in the AI era.
Exactly. So is all of this just human selective perception?
That is where the modern data science comes in, and the results are really deeply polarizing. Researchers are now using advanced algorithms like transformer models and MATLAB to run null models.
Null models, meaning they strip the text down and algorithmically scramble it.
Yeah, they randomize the letters, they shuffle the words, generating basically millions of randomized permutations of the text.
Okay.
And then they test the original text against these blind scrambled models to see if the original's mathematical clusters are just normal linguistic chance.
And what happens when the machines stress test the math?
Well, modern peer-reviewed studies show that the original text's mathematical clusters have massive, highly significant statistical deviations from pure chance.
Really?
Yeah, the architecture, despite the anomalies and the manuscript variations we discussed, it holds up to intense machine scrutiny. The stochastical improbability is staggering.
But there is a very dark side to this AI era, too. Because we aren't just using AI to analyze data, people are using AI to hallucinate reality.
Oh, the viral disinformation is a massive problem for serious scholarship.
It is. If you scroll through social media right now, you will find it flooded with fully AI-generated deepfakes about Code 19.
Yeah, you'll see these incredibly polished viral videos claiming that a Professor James Matthews of Cambridge or a Dr. John Michaels analyzed Code 19 and was so mathematically blown away that he immediately converted to Islam.
And they get millions of views, thousands of comments.
But here's the reality check. Those people do not exist.
They are entirely hallucinated by AI.
Serious academic institutions actively warn against sharing these viral fairy tales because they damage genuine, rigorous research.
We want empirical certainty so badly in our modern world that we are willing to let machines invent fake authorities to give it to us.
Which brings us to a fascinating synthesis of everything we've explored today.
Yeah. We stand at an incredible triangulation of faith, cutting-edge science, and historical logic.
Let's look at the facts. This text was not written at a desk with a calculator. The mathematical symmetries, the odd-even balances, the prime number matrices, they deeply baffle modern AI.
It is logically improbable to be mere chance.
Right, but at the exact same time, It contains human anomalies, historical manuscript variations, and structural cracks that prevent it from being a cold, rigid, absolute mathematical law.
And philosophically, that is exactly as it should be, because mathematics does not force belief.
Exactly. Think about it. If a religious text could definitively prove God's existence like a geometric equation, human free will would instantly become obsolete.
You wouldn't be choosing to believe. You'd be forced to accept a calculation.
It's profoundly meaningful that in Arabic, the verses of the Quran are called ayat.
And ayat translates simply to signs.
A sign doesn't give you undeniable empirical proof that strips away your autonomy. A sign simply offers you a perspective. It points you in a direction.
You see the sign, but you still have to use your own free will to choose whether or not to walk down that path.
The math isn't a cage, it's a signpost.
A signpost, I love that. So, as we wrap up our deep dive today, I want to leave you with a final reflection. We've talked about prime numbers, ancient alphabets, and the architecture of the cosmos.
It's been a journey.
It really has. But perhaps the ultimate message behind Code 19 isn't the number itself. Perhaps the message is simply that life and the universe we find ourselves in is deeply, profoundly intentional.
There is a hidden architecture to things that seem chaotic on the surface.
Exactly. So, as you step back into your day, ask yourself this. If the very fabric of existence is woven with such deliberate hidden patterns, what intentional patterns are you choosing to weave into your own life? Keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep exploring the deep meaning of it all.